Hello guys, today is Thursday, 21st of January. Yes, it is 2021. And today I'm just kind of making a quick one, just something that came into my mind, but literally just an example of like long-term thinking versus like we're gonna make something really right now and then whatever happens later we'll deal with it as it's gonna come later. Recently my computer has finally started playing up after 5 years of abuse, and obviously because I've been moving from place to place as well, so had got a few bangs on the way. And it moved from England to Germany, around Germany, from Stuttgart to Berlin, around Berlin. So it had a bit. And it's finally started to go. Okay, look, you know what? I'm done. I'm starting to pack up. Obviously, I play a little bit of games, so I do need something which is gonna be able to take the damage as well on that side. And I started looking into what's hardware available, and I found that number one, the pricing of hardware has gone insane. So if you look at things like, I don't know, TVs, radios, CD players, all that stuff is going down, despite the fact that it's better and better things coming out. But the computer stuff, it's just like the computing prices is just keep on going up. Where I could pick up like top of the range processor a few years back for like, I don't know, 500-600 max, and that was the Intel, and it was like, wow, it's overpriced. And you could go and pick up an AMD, was not really kind of much worse than in Intel, and you could keep it running for about 300 quid. Now these guys have like doubled, like sometimes tripled in price. The top of the range processors we're looking at 1,000 quid plus, or €1,000 plus. And I was like going, what's going on? So why is it happening? Why is that Intel, which has not really improved their processors that much, why can they get away with charging such a ridiculous amounts of money? And what's happening with AMD? Why is it that they're charging into like I say, into 1,000 quid for a processor? Some processors, like some of the stuff they have, which is like going for into like I don't know, a couple of thousand for a processor. I was like, that's insane. Something's gone really wrong in the computer industry, in the hardware industry, while I was not really following it. And what I have found, it's literally just kind of people started saying, oh look, Intel is still selling us pretty much the same stuff. They have not made any huge leaps and bounds in their like processes. They're still on like this kind of, they technically still on the process which they've been on for the last like 6 years. Everything they do is like just little tinkering and changes, something where Apple has started complaining. So they're saying, look, Apple has moved away from Intel and they started making their own processors because Intel has not been developing very much, and AMD is like doing all this great stuff as well, and it's kind of taken away. And I was looking at this and I was like, well, wait a minute. This is a classic case of playing for the long game versus we're gonna do something which sounds really cool now. One of the principles is, those who understand a bit in the mechanics of this whole thing, is the Intel is still building their processors at the like 14 microns or something like this, whereas the AMD has in the last few years gone from like 16, 14, like last time I've heard, and now they've gone all the way to 10 microns, so like much, much, much smaller. Like literally nearly 1.5 times smaller than what Intel does. And what I'm seeing is that Intel, somebody says, oh look, now Intel has actually took their old processors and they've just sent them off to another company which produces it for them, and then they just package it up in Intel and just sell them on. So Intel has gone bonkers, while AMD is making these huge strides of nothing really special, really. Like, and when you're looking at this, what you understand is the same story is repeating itself. When, again, those who follow the technology, all this modern advice seems to be full of shit, and this is why. When DDR4 came out, which is a type of random access memory, right? This is for the techies, okay? When DDR4 came out, just before that, AMD have done exactly the same thing. They have done all this cool stuff for the previous version of RAM, and then DDR4 came out and they've been caught with their pants down, right? And they've been trying to play a catch-up game ever since then. It's only like last couple of years that they have actually moved on to DDR4, whereas Intel has been on DDR4 for years. So their processors have been on DDR4 for about 2 years before, 2-3 years before that of AMD. And now the story seems to be repeating itself. So for the last few years, last couple of years, Intel was playing a long game. Because AMD kept on changing the technical structures, they having to produce, so going from this 14 micron to 10 micron, this means they're always upgrading their hardware that they use to build the processors. So they're whacking tons and tons of money into this kind of R&D, right? And then starting producing those things, making them available, and people go, we're getting a great deal. But what it also means, by constantly upgrading, by constantly moving to this kind of more, they ended up having to charge more and more for the processors just so they could pay for all the research. So now AMD processors is, if not equally, but quite often can be more expensive than Intel for a fraction of performance increase. Right, you're not looking 10-20% performance increase. You're just going wow, this has gone couple of points up here, this is couple of points up here, it's and when you're doing this so much, you go doesn't really matter, it's for me as a basic user, it doesn't really matter. For somebody for whom every little bit counts, maybe, but that is it was the price. And then once every bit counts, but the price comes in, you go not really, right? And what we're seeing is, in the long game, because AMD needs to keep on hiking up the prices to pay for the research, which they do right now and release right now, and next year they're gonna change something else and they're gonna do this. What we see Intel doing is they go, we're gonna trickle with the software, we're gonna tickle with the internal workings, we're gonna play with how this does that and how this does that. And what we see is a preparation for the next generations of RAM. Why does it matter? Well, the RAM is the thing which kind of makes things faster a lot. So when you buy in quite often new PCs with new RAM, the new RAM means it's gonna have different new standards. I don't know, because the new processors that are coming out right now, they're set up for RAM 4, for DDR4. So obviously to make them ready for DDR5, they have to have the software that, installed in the processor itself to make sure that it can read DDR5. It needs the processing units on your motherboards to be able to read DDR5. And what I'm seeing is that, like, while doing all these everyday updates, every year into year updates on the hardware side of, like, AMD is like hiking their processors very high up in the price, so Intel can get away with charging a fortune and making a fortune on the structures which they have already had in place for the last 3-4 years. I mean, people still buy new PCs, people still buy new laptops, people buy lots of new stuff, and Intel can just keep on getting money without having to change any of their hardware. And now where they're starting to change hardware, they just outsource their production of their old chips. That's where we see the new game. They outsource the introduction of their old chips to some other company, and now they can start bringing new factory lines, new things, so that the next incrementation of their processes that's gonna come out in the next few months is gonna be new workings, okay, going down from probably 14 micron to 12 micron or whatever, and doing all this in one big bundle, and also making sure that this stuff is coming out all up and ready and running, having all the things for the motherboard developers ready, so for all the commands that they're gonna run and how they're gonna run them, so that all the hardware comes out as soon as DDR5 hits the market, which they promise us that they will do this finally by the end of this year. So, and we can see that Intel is playing a long game, because the DDR5 was supposed to be out in 2018. That never materialized. They moved it, and from the 2018, Intel has essentially stuck to the same base processor that they had. They will twinkle a bit in the software, they will play a bit with other things, but the essential core base of what they were doing has not changed much since 2018. So we see the guys playing the long game. And why is the AMD's current behavior bad for consumers? Well, beforehand, AMD were the guys who would say, okay, we're not gonna try to beat you in this, we're just gonna provide people with those alternatives which are maybe slightly better, maybe slightly less, but also comparatively low in price. And AMD's behavior, AMD's attempt to, like, we're gonna beat you on clock speed, on something else, is like, yeah guys, great, but unless you sit down and play with your software, make sure that everything runs as smooth as it can for the next if they did that over the last 2 years, maybe the things such as AMD is known for having their drivers play up and bring things to a crash. Yep, happened to me again. Same stuff when it happens to other things, like all these things. If they simply for the last 2 years sat down and played the long game while bringing down the prices of the hardware, right, so that we don't have to pay £1,000 or euros or dollars for a processor, but so that we can buy essentially the same processor they had like in 2017, 2018, but instead of having paid for it like 500 quid when it was worth, when it just came out, so that the price came down and we could pick up a good 8 core, like, I don't know, maybe they could introduce multi-threading, so they could have like the same processes essentially, but now they'll have 8 physical cores and they'd have multi-threading on the cores, so they'll come as 16 cores, and we could have all that, and we could have it for 150 quid or for 100 quid. So essentially we could continue renewing things, like if we needed to, updating, keeping in check, keeping the prices in check, and making sure that the Intel can't get away with murder, making sure that the Nvidia that cannot charge, like, again, 2000 euros for a graphics card is like insane. Computing prices have gone insane because there's nobody, the competition, which is AMD, which is in competition to both Intel and Nvidia, have just gone insane on a short game. We want to beat you now, right? Instead of having that long game view where they'll be like, we're gonna do this cool stuff and this cool stuff while playing the long game as well. So we're gonna make this cool stuff as software stuff. We're gonna make this. We're gonna make sure that our processes are more economical, not by building a brand new production line every freaking year, making our prices go through the roof, but by tweaking the things we already have, and so that we only have to tweak the production lines as such. So when people talk today about the death of Intel, right, versus the AMD, and how Intel has lost the game, Intel has played a long game and they won the long game, while AMD has lost the plot, right? Which is, I love AMD, like, a lot of stuff they did over the years was very good for me as a hardware guy, person who's like likes to build his PC and likes to make sure the PC can, doesn't end up costing through the roof. And when I want to upgrade, I could always upgrade gradually, right? So AMD was all this, but now they have gone insane and have done lots of stupid shit. Okay? What does this mean? Well, it means that now that when DDR5 comes out, right, which is, like I said, it's good 3 years late, so this is why we've seen over the last 2 years that Intel has not really done any major physical upgrades. If they stuck to that and simply kept those companies in check, simply said, look, you know what, DDR5 is not out yet, we'd rather sit down and we'd rather put in the time into developing and ironing out our current technology, so that when the DDR5 comes out, we have something which is gonna come out with it the same way as all the Pentiums did, all the Intel processors did when DDR4 came out, and they went like, yep, it works out of the box, brilliant. While AMD spent the next 3 years trying to catch up. So now we're gonna have the same thing. Now we're gonna have that the DDR5 is coming out, they're promising it by the end of this year. Well, okay, cool, 3 years late. When it comes out, Intel is not only gonna have the ironed out software bit for it, so like slow time built up, but it will also have an opportunity to give a huge boost to its own processes by simply saying, hey, we're gonna go from like 14 nanometers architecture to 12 nanometers architecture. Boom, and you have a big jump which comes with the hardware jump, with the software jump, and with the surrounding hardware, which is the RAM, all the motherboard stuff that comes around it as well. all that stuff is gonna come out. It's gonna walk out of the box, and I'm afraid AMD is gonna come out and they're gonna go like, yeah, but we can't really jump any further. There's this physical limits to how fast you can, make your processors, how small you can make them, and they will struggle to give us anything worthwhile for a while. So as soon as DDR5 comes out, the long game is gonna be on, and I'm afraid AMD is gonna lose because they are playing the short game. They're playing the game of let's please the crowds now. Right? They remind me of modern politicians, Trump included. Okay, where they are just trying to please the people right now, right here. Cool, done, we've done the pleasing. What happens in the next 3-4 years? Who gives a damn? We sort it out once we get there. Right, and Intel has played the long game and they have won. Will they get Apple back as a customer? I'm not sure. Will they work on the energy savings of their processors and the speeds? Again, I don't know what they've got backed up in there. What I'm talking about is just the things which are available essentially from the public domain. So I'm not doing this especially, I'm just recording this one just to give an overview where I see that the modern reviews and the modern talk about Intel versus AMD game is failing, and what I see that is being done, what I can deduce that is being done by simply looking at the comparison of the actions of all the companies. Okay, we'll see how it goes, we'll see what produces in the end, and they'll probably take a few more months before we see the results. But until then, I just hope you don't need to buy a new computer, because damn, you're gonna be wasting your money. Right? But if you just need an upgrade to your computer, if you have a computer which is like 3 years old, 2-3 years old, maybe 4, right, and you have, for example, a dodgy graphics card, that's what I seem to be having in mind, so mine is gonna be getting a new graphics card soon. Right, look at the minimum possible upgrades that you can do. So don't look to buy a completely new computer, because that's going to be overpricing things. If you have a 4-year-old computer and it has like 4 gigs of RAM and an oldish graphics card, but the processor is still good, right, look into adding a couple of a bit more RAM. Look into maybe upgrading the graphics card. That's it. If you have a laptop, unless it's completely dead, it's like if it can't be brought back to life, then yeah, okay, you need a laptop. But if you don't need, if it's just a bit slow, again, you could probably look in a 3-year-old laptop. You could probably look at upgrading the RAM. It's gonna cost you about 50 to 100 euros, pounds, depending, to upgrade the RAM. It will make it faster, it will make it speedier, right? Maybe in some laptops you do have a separate graphics cards. It happens. So in many of those you can look around, at least I've seen online, there's some graphics cards for laptops. So again, maybe upgrading a graphics card and adding a bit more RAM, again, it's gonna cost you like 100 or couple of hundred euros, depending if your machine is was never that powerful. Again, adding a new graphics card and more RAM is going to increase its power. So because you can't upgrade the processors in the laptops, but if it's working fine and it's just kind of struggling a bit with the latest and greatest games, guys, just put the resolution a bit down. You don't have to play it at 8K, and just enjoy the game for now like this, and wait until the DDR5 comes out, because it's gonna come out with a completely new set of processors, completely new set of, say, RAM, mouse, motherboards, stuff like this. Graphics cards, if you have a PC, like I said, the graphics card is probably a good way to upgrade. But again, like, graphics cards in modern days, you don't really need to buy the top of the range. So, and again, we're kind of looking the same thing, where AMD used to be a check against the overpricing Nvidias, but now it's not, because again, trying to please the crowds, they drove the price up. So now we're stuck buying a technology which is not really taking full advantage of what is available and what will be available. So again, if your graphics card is dying, look around for about 250 quid card, and then wait for a year. And once the entire thing comes out, because again, it will be like sometime this year, so you'll be able to buy new parts, and just simply changing your board and the processor and the RAM will open up new opportunities, even for the cards which are just like 1 year old. Again, don't overpay, because the 1 year old card is going to be like 250. The newest card, because it's got some extra gimmick which you're probably never going to be work out on the modern screens, because they just not made for it. Right? So unless you really have the eyesight, which is way better than 100%, you're not going to be able to make that much difference out of it. And say a year-old card is going to do miracles. And once you upgraded your hardware to new processor, new motherboard, new RAM, that's when you can buy the cards which came out this year. And again, for the money you're gonna buy them, so in total between the two cards, you're probably gonna spend less money than buying the top of the range card right now, which costs like 6, 7, 800, 1,000 easy, which is an overpriced overpayment for an overpriced piece of metal, which is not gonna be able to take advantage of things that are there now. Okay, that's my opinion. Say, look at the companies not just as the short game, but as the long game, and we can see that this is the long game, and this is how companies continue remaining on the top, right? Versus the short game, which is many of us very much like AMD like to play. I've got this now, I've got this done, it's impressive, everybody likes, everything is cool. And what we get in there is that 6 months later, we're sad, we've just wasted money on something we didn't need. Right, so good luck to you all. I hope when you're building your new computers, you're gonna enjoy the part. I do. Right, and I hope that you're gonna take all the modern reviews on AMD versus Intel or whatever with a grain of salt, in the understanding that there is more at play than something that impresses us right now. Instead of being able to wait and get the benefit of what is coming. Okay, that is actually a thought that came into my mind while talking, is that when they compare how people become rich and poor, right? They say that the rich people, they made this experiment where the kids were told, hey, you can have an ice cream now, or something else, but we'll say it's ice cream. You can have one ice cream now, and you can have it, or you can wait for half an hour, and you can have two ice cream in half an hour. Ice creams, right? And you can have two ice creams, right? And the kids who were able to beat that and wait for half an hour they can get the two ice creams tend to do better. Kids that play the long game. Right, there's a lot of other conditions to being able to play the long game, and obviously growing up around places where people have the opportunity to teach you the benefits of the long game by saying if you can wait for like a month, we'll buy you this and that, only that this now, right? Same thing goes like, and these people who can play the long game, who can wait, will always become better off later on in life. And this is the example I think we're seeing with Intel versus AMD. AMD is the poor kid that goes like, hey, I'm gonna grab the ice cream now, and Intel has decided to wait for the ice cream in 3 years, but now in 3 years they're planning to have all the ice cream they can get. Not just one cone of ice cream. They just gonna try and get everything, because I don't think that AMD is gonna have anything to really stand up to Intel with, because they already threw all their cards on the table. They're spending too much money on rebuilding their production and things like this to make the physical changes to the cores of their processes, instead of like saying, hey, we're gonna sit down, wait, and once things come down, once we've got the new hardware to play with, that's when we're gonna make that physical change, right? And we'll see the result. Okay? Thank you very much. Have a good one. Take care.